Strategic communications is not about being right. Strategic communications is about winning. So strategic communications are not only about being fair, correct, morally right. It is about statecraft. This man must be one of your finest minds. He must understand what is happening on ground, put it into good wordsmithery, and be able to communicate it well. And he has to have a very deep political military understanding, because he must know what to say, what not to say.
Have with me Lieutenant General Raj Shukla, who has joined us before, but he's been a very vocal proponent of strategic communication during and after Operation Sindoor. And today we're discussing all of the things that could have been done better, as well as things that were in fact done right, and what the narrative is on Operation Sindoor. So Lieutenant General Shukla, a very warm welcome to you again. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Sindoor. Thanks a lot for getting me again.
Of course. So first question, the Indian Twitter space is abuzz again because some Pakistani accounts that were previously banned during the operation were now banned, allowing them to milk Indian views, as well as, essentially make money off of Indian audiences, not, 3 months after the Pahalgam terror attack. So it's been banned again, but that was due to a massive outcry of Indian voices on the internet talking about this. So was this an oversight? Was there something more rotten? What are your views?
So, I'm not a big proponent of this banning. What all do you ban? So you ban TikTok, now you will ban Park social media handles, or you will, people are talking of banning DeepSeek. Where is all this going to lead? There must be some very strong reasons to ban them, perhaps because of the fake news and all that stuff. But in the long run, is that the answer? I'm not too sure about that. I have a firmer view on what our strategic communication should be and what we should do in this space. So that is something I think which is more important. What are the exact drivers for banning them? I'm not too sure. What is it? You tell me.
Sorry, I'll have a counterpoint to this. Just because in terms of trade as well, any country that has grown has used protectionist policies, including the US, including China, and then added manufacturing capacity before then exporting. So a sense of protectionism in order to counter those who are way ahead of the game is something that is done in any sphere in order for a longer term view. I understand that from a longer perspective, it always helps to have a better product. For example, a lot of US universities have seen a lot of riots in the recent past. It turns out that a lot of this was funded via Qatari and Chinese money through TikTok. So do we have the security and the resources, security measures and the resources available to counter such campaigns? So that is a small counterpoint to this, plus the fact that some people might be consuming content from ISPR funded, ISPR propagated channels on all platforms without understanding that they are in fact, trying to have a subliminal messaging to radicalize them. So that is, I would put it at a national security level sort of thing. This is essentially information warfare in that sense. So hence my slight disagreement.
So, what you say, maybe the actual drivers why we are banning this kind of stuff. But so see, that is the whole point about strategic communications. There is an old African proverb which says that unless the lions have their own historians, the story of the hunt will always glorify the hunter. Yes. The point is, where are our historians? Where are our strategic communications? Now, that is the issue. I think that is the core issue on which I have a clearer viewpoint. which is this, that strategic communications is not about being right. Strategic communications is about winning. It is about Sam Dam Dand Bhe. Winning it by means fair, if necessary, foul. That is strategic communications. It is not about having facts on your side. It is about convincing those that you win to convince. Now, here the argument gets deeper. For example, if TikTok is a useful instrument, where is our TikTok? Where is our TikTok? TikTok started off as an instrument which was hip, cool, and fun, but it was also driven by great strategic foresight, which is to have an algorithmic device to manipulate Western audiences. So strategic communications are not only about being fair, correct, morally right, it is about statecraft. And India should know it because we've had Sutradhars in Ramayana and Mahabharata. So strategic communications now is a deeper craft. It is just not about engaging with the media one fine day. It is about ideation. So you should know what your thoughts are, what your narratives are ahead of time. Link it to the execution, ideation, execution, and then supplement it with narration. So ideation, execution, narration, they cannot be in silos. So if you ask me today, let's go back to Sindoor. If we have become a truly joint force, then you should not have this Air Force view, Army view, Navy view. This is antiquated. You should have a 3-star, one of your brightest men in the 3 services, who has the ear of the Chief of Defense Staff, who is in the same room as the Raksha Mantri when decisions are being taken, perhaps even the Prime Minister, who understands the whole game and is therefore in a position to craft the narrative. He should be ahead of your media. He should be ahead of foreign medias. He should understand the press gaggle. So push the narrative, supplement it with action, and then build the narration. So it's a very deep craft, and the reality is that we are underinvested in it, and it will not happen in one day. So let me make another point. Just as the military invests greatly in platforms, so we invest in the tank, we invest in the MiG-29, we even invest in the nuclear deterrent. By nature, we do not invest in strategic communications. When I was young, I was told, you don't have to speak, let the guns do the talking. So what's the good? That be substantive. My later years, I discovered that the guns themselves didn't suffice. You also had to do the talking. If you don't do the talking, what will happen is that a good military action, if you don't have the narrative, somebody else will fill it in. And this is exactly what happened in Sindoor. We did the military stuff better because, the week Asim Munir was in Washington, I happened to be in Washington in the same time. He was not only being dined by or lunched by Trump, he was the toast of all the think tanks there. He was going, speaking, and it is a fact that our lobbying, our investment in these Western capitals is of a lower order than of Pakistan. Many years back, I had gone to their Indian Institute of Strategic Studies when I was a brigadier, some 10 years back. And the British brigadier who briefed me on Jammu and Kashmir, he came out with this narrative as if in Kashmir, we are the aggressor and Pakistan is the aggrieved. So I told you, who told you this? And at T, promptly 3 Pakistani colonels popped up and we had none. So if you invest in strategic communications, this is what will happen. Look at DG ISPR. If you followed him carefully, he speaks grammatically wrong English. But he's on BBC, he's on CNN. We are absent. He's got a strange bluster about him. So this is the problem with strategic communications. I am arguing it's a very deep craft. It is part of what is called cognitive warfare. It caters to multiple audiences. I'll give you an example. Look at China. Its internal narrative for many years has been this 100-year strategy. We will beat the West in 100 years. So their top soldiers, their bureaucrats Members of the Politburo had been told 100 years we'll beat them. This started in 1949. It took various forms of Mao standing up, Deng's hide and bite, Xi's going loud and proud. Now, this is the internal narrative. What was the external narrative? Peaceful rise. We have no interest in becoming this big power. So, it is a sophisticated craft. Look at how the Pakistanis used it. They saw that what concerned the West was nuclearized subcontinent. Nuclearized subcontinent. See what they do. I wonder whether you were around in 2001. I was a lieutenant colonel in 2001.
Long
You were.
time before.
Long time. Oh, sorry then. So 2001, 2001, the Pakis hit the parliament. Recall
Yes.
that.
Yes.
It was a dastardly act of terror. Our political leadership survived. We were lucky, and perhaps people acted with some skills in the parliament. And when we were mobilized, we said we are mobilizing for war. That was a great mobilization. Sindoor was nothing. Sindoor was not even one third of that. The cantonments were empty. The Indian Air Force was the highest states of alert. The Navy had deployed to the seas. It was almost war. And what happens now? Look at this. In May 2002, they repeat the attack in Kaluchak military station. 34 soldiers, women and children are gunned down in cold blood. Just sense the outrage and the anger. Prime Minister Vajpayee says, "Aar paar ki ladai, we thought we'll go next week." And what happens? Hamid, Gul and all those suspects, these famous suspects, start off with the nuclear rattle. That, these nuclear weapons are not to be kept in our museums. Now I blame the West, the gullible West. They buy into this narrative. The American embassy here is thinned out. Other Western embassies follow through. Some businesses exit. And we are told, the aggrieved is told, listen, be responsible. This is a nuclearized subcontinent. You have to be responsible. We are reprimanded and we build this doctrine of strategic restraint. Look how Pakistan has skillfully played into the Western narrative. And now, under the garb of that narrative, it became a doctrine. What was the doctrine? That commit acts of terror, then play the nuclear card. They would do it every time. This time, what have we done? And the despair was so deep. If you recall people like Arun Shore, they said, not a ear for a ear, not an eye for an eye, not a tooth for a tooth. For one eye, both the eyes. For a tooth, the whole jaw. But that strategic restraint narrative was so deep, and somehow we started glorifying it. We said after 26/11, we said we were very wise that we did nothing. Look what it is coming to. 261 people or whatever dead. Now look at this. Pakistan playing into the Western belief or narrative of a nuclearized subcontinent. This time, what did we do? We proved that this was a schoolboy nuclear bluff. So, narratives are extremely complicated. It is just not one fine day emerging and addressing the press in clipped English. That's not strategic communications. It's about, as I said, the ideation, the execution, and the narration. So this is something that we need to understand. So we must set aside budgets, 100 crores for strategic communication, invests in penetrating Western think tanks, in being there on New York Times, CNN. I'm told they deplatform you. They don't even call you. So we have to, if those Western narratives matter to us. So that is, and what happened this time was by the time our parliamentary delegations reached the West, that narrative had already got hardened, the Pakistani narrative. Now to unharden it is a big challenge. So it's a continuous thing. We have to believe in it and invest in it enough. Then, if your statecraft tells you that we need a TikTok, why not have an Indian TikTok? If it is a matter of statecraft. So have these instruments, build them. Let me tell you, the politician has understood strategic communications very well. In the political space, there may be a narrative in Delhi, but we have influencers and other ways of taking it down to the constituency in Raebareli and Lucknow. We know how to win it there. It's not about saying a grand statement in Delhi, but taking it to the grassroots where it wins. In the national security space, I don't think we have that understanding and that deep sophistication to take our narrative, build a capacity on that narrative or on the ideation, and then supplement it with a narrative. So I think those are the larger questions. This banning and all is also okay. I mean, the drivers, if what you are saying, those are the drivers. But to the, I'm not making an elitist point, but the ISPR cannot convince me. ISI cannot convince me. I will look at the reality of what it is. But yes, there may be audiences, and perhaps that's the reason. But the point that I'm making is that it is a far greater subject, a subject of greater sophistication, and we need to invest far more in strategic communications than we have invested in the past.
I think there's a there's always going to be a paucity of time when I speak with you, especially on things like this, because you have so much information on the AI bit as well. Because today's narrative becomes real for tomorrow's AI warfare as well. So it's extremely important that India pays heed to trends in information warfare, or like you put it, cognitive warfare, and. What do you think is lacking? Why can we not preempt this? Because the defense attaché in recently, I think it was a
Indonesia.
Indonesian briefing, right?
Indonesia.
Indonesian, yeah, Indonesian briefing. So that was very wrongly put on. I will tell you how badly it was put, because just a few days before that, we were in a close group of international experts where an analyst put it across very well that India is a democracy. We have, our military leaders are subject to democratic and political will, and hence they were fighting for very specific strategic outcomes to attack only terrorist sites, and thus obviously they would be more at risk. They would be more vulnerable to rogue tactics by Pakistan. Instead, we have a defense attaché who comes across and messes up the communication. You can't pull back that sort of information. Once it's out there, it will be amplified by all the actors in the space, including ours, even the well-meant ones. But anything that has gone wrong will always be amplified badly only. So how do you think language training is something that is necessary, that contextually using the correct language becomes necessary? Preemption is something that we don't have at all in terms of communication. We don't preempt the responses to what we put out there. We're only trying to use facts. So what do you think can be done in this regards?
So, see, you're absolutely right. You need to have training in this. And let me tell you how it happens. It happens, and in some areas we are deficient. So I remember when I was a colonel and a brigadier in the MO Directorate, before the chief stepped out to address the media, he would spend 8 hours in the MO Directorate, where we would look at what you are saying, what kind of words to use, what are the traps that you must not fall into, what you should answer, what you should duck, what you should weave. Because strategic communications is not about speaking the truth. It is about winning the narrative, understanding where the mischief is, choosing the words. That's why I say, please, I must make this point again. I'm saying we must have a DG, strategic communications. Something is happening on it, I'm told. This man must be one of your finest minds. He must understand what is happening on ground, put it into good wordsmithery, and be able to communicate it well. And he has to have a very deep political military understanding, because he must know what to say, what not to say. Where is the mischief? I'll give you one example. 4 months back, I watched a play called Hamare Ram. And I'll exhort your viewers and you to watch the play. It was my first experience. I'm not a very connected man with all this stuff. But Hamare Ram in Hindi, because of Ashutosh Rana, a superb communicator in Hindi, he took Ramayana to a new level. In diplomacy, statecraft, watch it. I tweeted when I stepped out, it was as gripping as Godfather. Can you imagine a Ramayana being as gripping as Godfather? Because he understood it so well, his language was so powerful, and in Hindi, it was just a smashing hit. Now he is the communicator who has taken these epics to a new high. We need that kind of those professionals who are soldier communicators who can handle this kind of stuff. So I keep making this point that national security is an extremely sophisticated business. It just cannot be left to anybody. You have to develop these skills over a period of time. And now let's get back to Sindoor. This whole business, I am saying, I'm not privy to what happened inside. I'm just commenting from the outside. So the political leadership, if it said that we will target the terror infrastructure, they're entirely in their rights to say so. When the military leadership communicates with them, they have two options. Either you agree with them, in which case you salute and obey. And this is, I'm talking from the principle of civil military relationship. Or you can argue back, you can push your case, just like Sam Manek shot it in 71. But if you cannot do that, and once you agree, now it's no longer a political directive, it's a politico-military commitment. It is a politico-military commitment. Now you have to devise or find military means to achieve these political aims. And the politicians have a right to dictate what the political aims are. This is where military skills come in. So I'm saying it's not just a political decision. It is a political. And we did pretty well. Why are we falling into this trap? Have the Iranians or the Israelis told us what they lost in the last conflict? Mr. Trump, who appears every evening on television, has he told you that nothing went wrong? Something would have gone wrong. He doesn't go public about it. They have lost a couple of F-16s, F-18s. The Americans have.
As well, yes.
There is a reason not to disclose this for valid professional reasons. But if you really want to get to the truth, the real question is, you tell me on May 10th, where were the Pakistani J-10s, J-17s and HQ-9s? Weren't they scurrying for cover? They left their airspaces vacant. Pakistan was naked and vulnerable. Any nation which has Noor Khan hit, Noor Khan is 4 kilometers from the Pak Army headquarters. What was the messaging to them? So they got the solid military messaging. Quietly, their DGMO has come and pleaded with ours, and then they've gone and spun this narrative. So I'm saying we did well, our narrative was weak. Next time, our narrative would be better. But I certainly would not like to go to the Pakistani army way, which is do poorly and spin a narrative. Do nothing and elevate yourself to a field marshal. I mean, that is a pack of nonsense. That doesn't. But yes, we are a professional military. I'm saying our narrative could have been better. We must invest in the narrative. When you did so well, let any Pakistani answer this. Where was your Air Force? They take great pride in their Fizaya, defender of the skies. The truth of the matter is that you were scurrying for cover. J-10s, if your J-10s, J-17s were such a success, where were they on the 10th morning? And what did we hit? So, Goreka, I've been in the army for years. We were never allowed to talk of Punjab. We were told escalatory. This time we hit Rawalpindi, Raiwind. I've been a co-commander in Batenda. Opposite me was Bahawalpur. This Markaz is a veritable terrorist training academy with an obstacle course, with a swimming pool. We've gone and hit it. He knows he's been hit. The professional knows what's happened to him. So this, schoolboy narrative is not the point. Yes, I am an advocate of a sophisticated narrative, the manner that we have been discussing, which should be woven over a period of time. So you need to invest in strategic communications as a discipline. And if my information is right, some work is being done on that. And perhaps in a while you'll see. But yes, no doubt our narrative. Also just see, this is a game of talent. And ultimately India displayed the sagacity that when we took this narrative outside, we took our brightest people from the opposition. Mr. Shashi Tharoor, Priyanka Chaturvedi, Manish Tiwari, Mr. Owaisi, and the people that I have spoken to abroad, they are singing praises of Mr. Tharoor because he's talented. He's genuinely good. So these areas also need talent. Now the point is we have the talent. We have the talent. We have not created the instrument and the framework. Our anchors and people will put the Pakis to shame, but you take them to those institutions. Give them a platform on those NYT or whatever, if they matter to you. The other way is disregard them. As we grow in power, we also need to be a little thick-skinned. If we know what we are doing is right, why bother about every narrative? But so it is a combination of these issues, but it needs very sophisticated addressal. It needs very sophisticated addressal. A country of our heft, why shouldn't we have an Al Jazeera of our own? Or a BBC or a SPAN or whatever they were in the past, the Voice of America. You need somebody to tell your story. The Sutradhar is the same. To tell your story. We have been a little shy about that. The military, certainly, we were told, don't bother about the talking, the constitution, that kind of stuff. If you leave the space vacant, some fool is going to come and fill it in. So you have to, because today, see what's happening. Poor military actions are being disguised by weak narratives, and robust military actions are being weakened by deficits in narrative. So the narrative is important, extremely important in that sense.
So how did you just come up with that very amazing line? Is that on the fly, or is that something you've said before? That's a very perfect. I think that should be a headline somewhere.
No, I mean, so in a conversation, those ideas come. So, but I also, I took a talk on strategic communications of Sindoor and beyond. So some of this is from that. So while making the talk, I had jotted down these points. So that is where it's coming from.
Right.
And been listening to some debates. We have to create the platforms also for this.
Right. I was just coming to that. In terms of platforms, we have two deficiencies. One is that India does not have platforms, and the second is that the platforms that exist, international platforms that exist, they do not platform an Indian perspective. For example, Asif Khwaja immediately got on Sky News, I think, with Yalda Hakim, right? And although, of course, we know that whose narrative BBC is going to run, and Yalda Hakim was, of course, very good. The point is that the Pakistani had that airspace, right? And when finally we had someone from our side, then they were questioned about how many jets the Indian Air Force has lost. That was the sort of questioning. Hostility is fine, but then we should have had the gumption to answer that that's a strategic, we've met our strategic objectives. How do assets matter? Are we looking at the dollar? We just didn't have that. But also that's the thing, that we don't have platforms. Like you mentioned, we don't have a TikTok, we don't have our own Al Jazeera, we don't have probably we don't have adequate educational institutions that help with these things. But also we don't have a lobby that allows the Indian perspective to be platformed. So these are 2 points regarding platforms. How do we tackle them?
So see, we have to encourage all kind of stuff. For example, we've had some very elegant communicators. Mr. Arun Jaitley in the English, Jaswant Singh in the English, Sushma Swaraj in the English. What is Mr. Shashi Tharoor? He's one of the best communicators in English. And we used him pretty well. And from the other side of the political aisle. So this is all sensible stuff. This is good. What we should do better, for example, look at Raisina. I've been saying for a long time. Raisina has intelligently shaped foreign policy narratives over a period of time.
Yes.
I have been to some of these events of the ORF. They have genuinely shaped foreign policy. Now that's by having the dialogue for long, when you call people, then you invest in networks. So it gets done like that. If I know you over a period of time, and Sindoor happens and you happen to be on NYT, I'll give you a call and you will get me.
Yes.
But if I don't know you and I don't call you to India, if I don't, so that's how it happens. Our weaknesses are there. And I've been saying it for a while. We started off last year, but we need to enlarge it. In the national security space, why is the narration taking place in Singapore and Shangri-La? Why not in Delhi? So we started Chanakya Defense Dialogue last year. We should expand it in a bolder fashion. So say we had done Chanakya Defense Dialogue in a very bold fashion, I would know 20 people who would come from all over the world, and I would tell them, listen, here's a narrative, at least give me a chance, call me to your platform. and the reality would have got amplified by the narrative. So you have to invest in these things. Look at our think tanks. We have many think tanks which are degenerating into retirement clubs. It won't work that way. It can't be Raj Shukla with a couple of friends getting together. It needs to be serious business. So I can head it if I'm allowed to, but the serious researchers have to be young minds and they have to be well paid. This is
So,
our problem. We have neglected ideation. We think it's not necessary. Action, of course, is very necessary, but ideation is equally necessary. You have to respect intellect and you have to pay for it.
so this was a conversation that I had literally 2 days ago with someone who has funded a sort of publication platform within the country, good quality of writing, but there's not adequate marketing that gets these very good views across to policymakers who matter. And in that sense, I have known someone else who is now in government but was previously in the corporate space like I am right now. They put in their own money, started a sort of small group and brought out very well researched data backed papers. It went nowhere. They eventually went into government as a sole, person who got taken that. But the point is that there are people who are doing good work, and we discussed how to make it better because tomorrow I can start one. I need someone to also platform my work, and it is not something that someone who's not born a millionaire can afford to constantly do without adequate payment. But the payment is going into proven things, for example ORF, because there's a huge backer behind it. Adani seems to have started one. I think there's something in that space happening as well. But sure, other bigger businessmen can also do it. But the point is that we need so many. They have Stimson, Wilson, Carnegie, Rand Corporation. We have, and I can list a dozen just off the bat like that within one country. They all bolster the military industrial complex in their own different ways. If I want a narrative on a particular nation and I want a counterpoint to Stimson, I will go to Heritage. Right? It's from all sides of the political spectrum serving the same entity, which is national interest, or at least the capitalistic arms of the national interest, so to speak. We don't even have that understanding that if India Forum, which is actually a Soros entity, uh, there has to be something that comes from the other side of the political spectrum. It cannot be a foreign backed venture. It can have certain views that are not okay with the current political governance, but it has to still be in national interest. If it is an international interest, that's a blow to our sovereignty. So that is one side, and on the other side we have this conversation I had. This person told me that in terms of video they were having to make what is known as chapri content in order to get the views and to monetize the channel, and this is not going to be taken seriously in an academic setting, which is what we need. So how do we get to a point where people like that have a platform and we can source funds, or think, because there is no better time to be in geopolitics in terms of analysis, in terms of having an Indian perspective, propagating an Indian perspective, than now. If it's not now, it may be too late. So how do we get into that or encourage other researchers also? There's so many Indian graduates who are smart, who can be molded, mentored in a certain direction if only they have the space. So
Absolutely. So, see, this is the point that I began with. There will be a leftist narrative. That narrative has been around. I'm saying instead of banning those narratives, create superior narratives platforms in the space that you believe. So the right-wing conservative space, we have these think tanks growing, but they are not of the same quality and order. In USA, you have equally sophisticated platforms and institutions which feed both narratives. So we should build something like that. There is some good work happening. You read Ram Madhav's latest book on the world order. I was just skimming through it. I got it last week. It is making this precise point of deepening your right-wing narrative. I go to India Foundation very often. It's Ram Madhav's platform. It speaks this language, but it allows everybody else to come. So you have to beat them with the quality of your argument. Is also invest in these things more and more. And I am a little optimist on this because I see some of this happening. Right-wing platforms now making superior. I'll give you arguments well resourced. I'll give you one example of how the narrative matters. So all my time in the army, we were told, listen, India's focus is on development. Defense is really not too much of a priority. And in any case, defense, is non-productive. So it's not easy to fund it. Last month, there was an article by Aditya Kovaleri. I also met him. He's an Indian economist educated abroad. He wrote this article based on the American Economic Review, which made these startling facts. It said gun versus growth is a lie. He says if you invest 1 rupee in defense, it adds 1 rupee to your GDP. He said the fiscal multiplier is close to 2. So he said defense is productive. And here is an economist saying it. And he told me that, sir, just to say this, I've had to face a lot of problems. So look at how narratives are suppressed. Now we need to get these narratives going if we have to get our National Security Act together. So, so much of this stuff, there are so many ways to invest in it. But see, one thing, this is my personal hunch. I do not believe that Chapri content, I don't know whether you got that word from, but I know what it means, that it sells. It doesn't. My
I agree.
belief is,
I agree.
my belief is in the long run, substance matters. Substance sells. Let me give you an example. There is this tracker on technologies, emerging critical technologies, which the world reads. Why is it coming out from the Australian Strategic Policy Institute and not a think tank in India? Why should I investigate Chinese prowess in technologies through an Australian lens? Why are the best reports on the PLA coming from Hudson and Pentagon, not from India? He's our intimate neighbor. Because of this lazy narrative, our private sector, it doesn't invest in these think tanks. It will affect them. These think tanks are platforms to sell narratives which will benefit them. There are no immediately payoffs in terms of quarterly profits. Now you have to have the vision to invest in these things, private sector, even government. Our think tanks in Delhi are not very well funded. As I said in the beginning, just as we invest in platforms F-35, we should invest in the narrative that will amplify the reality of the F-35. So that has to happen. And see, just 2 more points I want to make. One area, let me tell you where we have done better than last time. Balakot, there was no imagery to back our claims.
We learned, yes.
Maxar at least has got the imagery going. So we said we did this in Bolari, imagery. We damaged this in Noor Khan, imagery. So that part has improved greatly and we must give credit. But where we need to go, you look at how the Ukrainian drones attacked the Russian strategic assets. The TUs, the nuclear submarine, I don't know what they did. You had high quality imagery showing you what happened. So you don't need the narrative. It just put before the world what actually happened. For that, you need investments in space, in other places, LEO, EW, cyber, which we are not adequately invested. And sometimes you really need to act. You just don't need the narrative. When you take out Hassan Nasrallah on the 27th of September 2024, what narrative you need? You just take him out. So it is a curious combination of, as I said, I'll go back to that central argument, ideation, action, and narration. There's the old saying, think like a man of action, act like a man of thought. Our problem is we draw these distinctions. Thinker, doer. What is it? Thinking general. I mean, what damn general if you can't think? Soldier, scholar. Why do you need these adjectives? The soldier is also meant to be a scholar. So our problem comes in these silos. And it is really the overwhelming lesson is that this national security story needs comprehensive addressing. It needs the instrument of force, you need good narrators, you need technologists, you need diplomacy. Everything has come together. And that happens only once in centuries, and therefore nations become great only once in centuries. That's the whole challenge before us.
Sorry, this funding problem that you mentioned, that's the reason that this low quality content that I mentioned previously. The reason is that no one can, for example, my channel is not monetized. I've not made a red cent off if they saw off my Twitter posting or any of that. It has helped with, allowing me to connect with very great thinkers like yourself. But the thing is that after a while, it's unsustainable. And so, someone who started off extremely academically, that is a person who has a proper publication platform, employs 10 people since years because, they fund it, siphon, fund it from their personal finances. They still need the channel to be monetized, to be seen by as many people as possible. And so that short term money is also necessary. It's not just a single person's grievance. It's something that I have myself faced. I've seen the other person that I mentioned who's gone into government. They've faced good work does not have a platform easily just because no one is looking for it. For example, if we look at the leftist space, there was this thing about 3 years ago where school children in Karnataka, they were forced to remove their hijabs outside the school. They suddenly decided to wear a burqa. Actually, it wasn't a hijab. They decided to wear the burqa to school. They previously did not. It turned out that it was PFI funded. However, when this woman, who otherwise never dresses like that in the traditional Arab fashion, she wears very normal clothing, there was this imagery where she is walking past three Hindu boys who are shouting at her, and it created this imagery of Hindu hooligans versus a chaste Muslim girl. And this woman was platformed to the extent that she was felicitated on platforms, multiple platforms. She was given the newest iPhone. She was given a scholarship to Harvard or some other international university. I believe it was Harvard, Muskan. And it was very quick. On the other hand, there was this Kashmiri girl. The black abaya is not a traditional wear in Kashmir. It's not been so until very recently, actually. So this young girl who had just cleared her 10th board exams was being felicitated. Turned out that she was the only one from her class who didn't wear the abaya. She didn't refuse it. She just wasn't wearing it. Well, from a sense of national unity or whatever, I suggested, let's gift her something. Let's just fund some resources together. Let's platform her because she was articulate, smart young girl. So why not? And she said very good things. My parents always support me as just a student, but we can get so many people onto our side, and also we can tell the story of so many real people on the ground. But no one is on the lookout. There was this very random young person who was picked up by other channels because they said something about just generally they the left is always on the lookout because they have platforms. They don't need icons. On the other side, I don't call it the right, so to speak. There is no right wing in India, frankly. On the non-left side, they create icons. We have one author, then we have another author. They are the same people who get called onto channels, onto YouTube channels, onto podcasts. We create one, we create two. We hope that the icons make the platform. That doesn't function. It's the platforms that should generate about 20 icons each year. 20, we don't even need them to be icons. We just need them to be speakers, narrative builders. We need soldiers for a cause. But yeah, this does not happen. They depend on icons, whereas they depend on platforms.
You're right. So the Indian ecosystem, which means the military, the government, the bureaucracy, and the private sector, has to realize that to sell your strategic communications, you need narrators, you need narratives, and you need platforms. Now, we are very chary of investing in platforms. That is an institutional problem. And I think the realization is now coming that unless you have the platform, where will your narrators go? So you need those platforms. And you have these bodies, these think tanks. For a state like India, what is 5 crores for every platform? A think tank in a year? It's nothing. The lack of publicity that you got after Op Sindoor and not getting a narrative right is worth 600 crores. What are 5 crores? So
Mm.
that understanding has to come. That is one. Two is we have to get this business case around narration right. So people, the point I'm making is that the talent in this space will ultimately get recognition. It may take time, and that happens in time without number. And substance matters. Now it may not happen hurriedly. It will happen in the long term. If you are convinced about what you say, your beliefs are right. But yes, platforms are essential. You need to give, as you said, non-left platforms have to be created, and you cannot do with icons alone. I quite agree. So the government must invest in it. The private sector, for example, some of our top business houses, what are 10 crores for you? You do that in the normal media platforms. Why don't you do it in the think tank space, which is academic, which has as much heft, as much heft? This business of thinking that all stories are sold at prime time is not true. Let me give you some examples. Look at Neil Ferguson. He's a serious historian,
Yes.
but look at his views. John Mersheimer, you may not agree with him, but look at his views.
I agree
Serious.
with John Mearsheimer. I think realism is something that the world actually neglected at its own peril.
There's a guy called Frank Dikötter. Have you read him of late? He gives that other narrative about China, that China is doomed. But it is useful to listen to that.
Sure.
And it is deep substance. Even in India now, it's gaining traction. Outside, you have 2-hour podcasts, 3-hour podcasts on the most what you would call boring things. So I'm arguing there is space for all this. For example, I follow Neil Ferguson. You have to read his real articles. They are what behind that pay walls. I pay for them because he's worth reading. So talent, substance matters. Any issue you take, you start from tomorrow. You may not agree with everything he says, but he has a distinct view, which is an elevated view from 10 other writers. So talent matters in the long run. For example, he has a company of geopolitical risk, and great people are invested into him because he tells you about geopolitical risk. If you tell a business company in India, he says, "क्या फालतू की बात है? क्या बताओगे आप मेरे को geopolitical risk के बारे में?" This is uninformed stuff. It matters. It matters to your business interests. But the trend is not picked up. So I'll give you another example. There's a channel called Red Mike. It is of this very Sanchit Upadhyay, I think. Usme there is a chap on the Hindi-speaking world, Saurabh Shahi. He does some of the best stuff on Ukraine and all these conflicts. So it is his ability to dedicate himself. Maybe he's got a good mentor in this guy. And it is also a misnomer that the non-English speaking space is dumb. They don't want serious stuff on national security. They ask very intelligent questions and all that. So we need to widen all these issues. And let me say this, that strategic communications is the space for the next 10, 15, 20 years. One, because India is now growing, it's growing in heft, and space for all these kind of stories is now emerging. And the second is that there is also an Indian realization that you need a narrative to accompany your deeds and your actions. So I think strategic communications in many ways are the future. Do we have a serious course on strategic communications in India in any of these universities?
So I have actually looked at some. It is their syllabi, like all of our syllabi. It is not actually we can look at it now because we're discussing strategic communication. But I will tell you that I have a massive issue with all Indian syllabi. They are designed to pick and choose from international syllabi, usually American, not even from a country that is Southeast Asian, for example, that has grown in a parallel trajectory to possibly India's at some point. We pick and choose from there, and we create a Frankenstein that is somehow supposed to create something. So that is why we have outliers, stand out students who are excellent, but it's not because of the system. It's probably despite the system. They learn some of the things in terms of communication in these institutes, but it's not particularly good syllabi for anything, including strategic communication. We don't have a course that does it from a suitably Indian perspective at all. They're very expensive as well. They're very prestigious and very expensive in the Indian context.
Now that we are plumbing the depths of the subject, so let me make one point here. You spoke of AI. Henry Kissinger said that it is a misnomer that AI is all about technology. He said AI is just 15% technology. The rest is your understanding of AI from the perspective of humanities, data. How is it going to be embraced? How is it going to be diffused? Henry Kissinger is saying this. Now I'll make a point. We are pretty far behind in the AI race. It is the Americans and the Chinese who are ahead. See, what are we going to end up with? If we don't do something very urgently, our data is going to be taken by these leaders in AI, going to be processed in AI and be sold back to us. So AI, this digital Macaulay, is a bigger threat than the original Macaulay. If we are not careful with our data, they will process it and package it back to you. So if this is also a part of strategic communications, look at the issues. We are too focused on science and technology. We are underinvested in humanities. I'll tell you the problems. You in the West have a Chris Miller who writes on the geopolitics of chips. Chip wars. Pick up that book, it's unputdownable.
Yes. Yes.
India doesn't have a Chris Miller. Our curriculum doesn't encourage a Chris Miller. So there is the geopolitics of space. There is the geopolitics of chips. Unless you understand it, the chip ecosystem, it's not just about coding. Today, AI can do the coding, but you need to do the thinking about AI. So as you go into this, it gets deeper and deeper. I'll give you a very good anecdote. Who was the guy who painted Mona Lisa? Leonardo da Vinci. Walter Isaacson has written a wonderful biography. And I'll just give you one story from this. Leonardo da Vinci was a combat engineer. He was a sapper, military engineer. But he painted Mona Lisa. Now in that book, he has, Leonardo da Vinci, he visualized कि Mona Lisa का जो face है कितना चौड़ा हो, कितना लंबा हो. He has done it through mathematical equations. I was amazed. He has put those equations in the book. But Leonardo da Vinci says that, my imagination about how the eyes should be, what should the glow on the cheeks and all that kind of stuff came from my deep interest in humanities. He said my interest in humanities was deeper in engineering. So Walter Isaacson makes this point that true genius lies at the intersect of humanities and technology. In India, you ask any family, it will just say कि भाई बेटे को क्या बनाना है? Engineer, unthinkingly engineer. We are so underinvested in humanities that
Sir, very recently, I think day before yesterday, someone posted that the number of humanities graduates in India were extremely high, and the growth was, I think, after 2010, it has gone very high. My issue is that even the humanities is functioning in its own silo. It's very removed from reality, from ground realities.
That's the second part of the problem. But the first part of the problem is that Indian families discourage the pursuit of humanities. क्या बनना है? Engineer. कहाँ जाना है? IIT. I mean, nothing wrong with that. You need IITs, you need good engineers. You also need good historians. You need good, excellent. Kissinger was not an engineer. Isn't he a great diplomat? International relations. ये सब कौन करेगा? Diplomacy, military. Nations become good on all this also. Here you need great. I'll tell you an example. I was in school in Lucknow. There was a very good chemistry teacher, R.P. Agarwal, very well known. Let's see how they would encourage you. On Friday, he would say, कि ये लो chemistry बहुत हो गई. ये लो Shakespeare पढ़ के आओ. Monday को Shakespeare discuss करेंगे. What was he telling you? He was a brilliant man when I look back. He was telling you that develop a well-rounded view of the world. So also read Shakespeare with this. And look at how encouraging the medium was. On Monday, the principal would walk in and say, Agarwal Sahab, kya ho raha hai? Chemistry ki class mein. He would say, Sir, Shakespeare discuss kar raha hai. And he would join the conversation. How has all that changed? It's not too far behind. We were always encouraged to be all round and not focus narrowly on science. That's the point of me. Science is great, but it is this. So narration, communication, all these issues are, when you plumb the depths, as I said, get into the deeper nuances. Why is a nation which was so good in IT nowhere in AI? Just not deep thinking enough. Why does Deng say that, so what if the Middle East has oil, we have rare earths? Why does an Indian politician not say that? Now, this is part of that ideation. Why do we not think long term?
Certainly, I think one of the things that, from what you're saying, it is something that I have also felt deeply in terms of Indian education, taking it all the way up to higher and elite education. Curiosity is killed.
Yes.
And it's not a superficial application base that can basis that can change these things. What simple thing is when I was learning Bharatanatyam when I was younger for just a couple of years, I learned it. I was very bored. It was not my thing.
Yes.
About 7-8 years ago, I was invited to a program. The kind of Bharatanatyam dances that we had seen were very traditional and very boring. As a child, this one that I saw about 8 years ago, it blew my mind. It was very, very beautifully done, sort of a fusion, but it was not at all demeaning to the traditional dance. There was this lady who was 6 months pregnant and doing splits while also doing Bharatanatyam. And it was not at all demeaning. It was done in an intimate setting that was darker, with on the floor. And the way uh the whole, I don't know what the troupe was dancing, was that from four sides. It was on the ground, so there was a central stage. From four sides, everyone could see a different story. Wherever you were sitting, you were being entertained by a different sort of perspective on the story that was being narrated. And as a child, had I seen something quite so beautiful, quite so enlightening, I would have put in more effort in my steps and my training. We are not exposed. We follow that Gita, do your duty, and the fruits, you will reap the fruits. But there is a lack of curiosity that is developed with only going that way. That, okay, this is my homework, I will do it, otherwise I will get beaten up, which was exactly how we were treated. And that's why I did the homework. There was no reason as to, oh, I can be a better person, I can contribute to the world like this, I can create something of value. That is still not given. All the elite schools as well that go, I have seen them, they get the latest technology, but the means of learning, they might get a lot more attention. That, beta, why are you feeling like that? Is your home environment okay? That sort of thing is probably not something that is going to help create someone who adds value at scale. It will create a better mental health than other schools, but it will not create someone who adds value themselves. So I think you mean to
Your,
say that is also a thing, that curiosity is killed now.
your city and institutionally, Mark Twain was once asked as to why he was so successful in life. He gave a very cheeky answer. He said, I took great care never to let my schooling interfere with my
Schooling
education.
and education, yes, yes.
In experience, I'll tell you, this is a very profound point. We waste so much time on the curriculum. Till 35, we are giving damn exams. You haven't stopped it. And, in this name of objectivity, we have brought in something that is killing curiosity. This true and false and match the form. We have produced a generation of true and false wonders who have just lost the larger wisdom of life. And ultimately, wisdom triumphs. So I think it is knowledge, education, wisdom. I was reading, I think, one of these one of these speaking trees articles, which said knowledge or wisdom is not knowledge. Wisdom is clarity.
Absolutely.
I can read 12 books, you can read two, you may be wiser than me. Clarity. There are some people who have that clarity. Now, this comes if you, over a period of time, don't straitjacket yourself in curriculums, homeworks. If parents have the sense to let you grow, let your curiosity grow, it should surprise us that of late, the people who are actually doing well are school dropouts. Bill
Mm.
Gates, Elon Musk, because they questioned the system early. What is the nonsense you're teaching me? The real challenge is why does India not produce Elon Musk, Bill Gates, Palmer, Lucky? कम आ रहे हैं हमारे system. We are having. See, I'm telling you, I'm making a very serious point. AMCA is not going to be built by these same engineers. To do the next generation aircraft, you need a creative mind. You will have to pay for those people. They will not come at 2 lakhs, they'll come at 10 crores. We must learn to respect talent. प्रतिभा जिसे कहते हैं. We do not. हमारे attitude क्या अच्छा, you are talented, कोई बात नहीं, go. You want to go to USA, go. No, we should say you're talented, stay back. I'll tend to your needs. America is very smart. It takes talent from all over the world. All over the world. I mean, unless Trump reverses this very good tradition. Talent from all over the world gives you the best university systems which create wealth, which create technology. They use that wealth to build a world-class military. Look how smart. World-class military. That military protects the economy, helps your economic interests grow. हमारे यहाँ, I mean, ITs are a respected brand, but they haven't produced a Nobel laureate for years.
Absolutely.
I went to Stanford 4 years back or 3 years back. I was amazed. My escort showed me, half in jest, he asked me, he showed me 5 reserved car parks and said, "Ye sir, kiske liye hain?" So I thought, Condoleezza Rice was in the campus, McMaster. I said, "Unke liye hogi." He said, "No." I said, "Must be for the Stanford president." He said, "No." He said, "Sir, we have 5 Nobel laureates on campus. These are for them." When I was speaking to the dean later, she told me that, see, these Nobel laureates, one is that they inspire, people want to emulate them, this, that, they are rock stars in that sense. Two, they get unlimited funding. She said, we reject federal funding, we don't need it. So we are autonomous, we can do so many more things. Talent. How many Indian universities have Nobel laureates in the campus? If we recreate Nalanda, Allahabad was the Oxford of the East. Look what we've done to it. Oxford of the East created Kanpur, Manchester of the East. So it's all linked, talent, ideation, communications. But the good news is that since these are virgin territories in the Indian context, there is great scope to grow.
I will say that there were a few factors that I have, you know, realized that previously there was a lot of focus on how our mindsets are made during our childhood, and we face so many issues with schooling systems. However, I have felt that adult education, higher education, as well as those in corporate jobs and siloed organizations like that, there is a lot of scope for a lot of private organizations to create critical thinking workshops, even for these organizations themselves, to create incubation spaces. Because one thing is, like you said, that on that ladder of knowledge, wisdom, clarity, knowledge is the lower part. But without adequate knowledge, wisdom is not possible on certain matters. And why I say this is because today, due to the internet and due to viral memes and things like that, most people are learning from video. It's a very, so earlier, when our fathers and mothers and grandmothers, when they used to have an opinion, it was based on reading very lengthy news articles across a decade. They were, despite the headline, they were actually able to tie together something they had read 10 years ago to something that they are reading now. And they had, that's how neural connections, neural networking is built by reading, is very different from what is learned from video. Videos can throw facts at someone that will validate an existing prejudice.
Or
So,
WhatsApp.
yeah, whatever, either medium will validate an existing prejudice. However, a deeper analytical mindset is simply not available in a lot of Indian adults at this time, despite their curiosity. Indians are one of the most curious people that are. One,
Yes,
their
yes.
curiosity is sort of killed. But two, they don't know how to apply that curiosity. It goes into opinion formation rather than analysis with a basis in knowledge. So I think adult education is something that a lot of private players can come into.
What you said has just sparked a couple of thoughts. One is, I'm quoting Neil Ferguson again. He says, when we were young, firstly, we used to get bored. I
Mm,
used to get, so when you got bored, what do you do? So you pestered your mother, she bought you a comic, she bought you a book. So you read. But you read because you got bored. Today, do people get bored any longer? I wonder, because they always got something to do. If you don't get bored, that curiosity will not come, you will not read. I'll tell you the value of reading books. The value of what you are saying, these neural networks. So yesterday there was a program on the similar call. So somebody asked me to come on a platform. I just had 20 minutes. So when I opened Wikipedia, some facts came. As those facts came, what I read about the similar accord in 1972, in some book, in some article came to my mind.
absolutely,
It
absolutely.
comes naturally. You will not have to refer to WhatsApp and all that. This is one part of the thing. Secondly, see, I'll tell you, you just said we need courses or something you said. Do we need more courses or do we need good teachers? I'll give you an example from my life. How teachers influence you. I think I was in class 5 or 6, maybe 7, when there was this a debate had started in Birla, this Bits Pilani. It was the first debate, an English debate. So I was going from the school in Lucknow, and the best came to Pilani, Lawrence School and Lovedale and Springdale's best schools. But I had a teacher called S.K. Bose. Look what he did. 3 months before that debate, he called 10 of us. Subject was non-alignment, something, something. He dictated a script to us, said, mug it up and come back. So a week later, we were back with the mugged up script. He heard us, 10 became 5. Now, with this 5, 2 months he would spend 4 to 6 every day and say, what is that word? Check the meaning in the dictionary. What is the synonym? He would labor on your diction, pronunciation. He told me one thing I haven't forgotten today. He said, to make a point, you don't have to raise your voice, drop it. 3 months he gave you a skill in public speaking which no course could have done. It was S.K. Bose. We must start respecting teachers and not their products. Unless we do it, you will not have this. Now, just to cut a long story short, just because of him, I went to that place and I won the debate because no other school had S.K. Bose. And it gave me a confidence for life. Because when I went to NDA, I won the public Bhavani Shankar debate 6 years, 6 terms running. S.K. Bose. And it gave you a platform because he taught you how to address communications in its nitty gritty. It got into my being that 2 sentences can't pass muster unless you've gone through every word. You've applied context. I'm a great believer in teachers and not these products. S.K. Bose is somebody I'll never forget. Look what he gave to me. Similarly, if there is a mentor in mathematics or so on and so forth, what will become of India? I may make one more point. Spoke about this homework and all now. I'm a very ambitious guy. My father was precisely the opposite. He was just not ambitious. Very content. He was in the Air Force, just not. See how it played out well with me. So I was never asked, how have you done in school? What are your marks? So you came back from school? Okay. Where do you want to go? Boxing? Go. Debating? Go. He was
Same,
made
same.
like that. Same to what it did to you. And my mother would nag him that you never ask about the marks. In retrospect, I think he was a very wise man.
Yeah, yeah,
He must have kept an eye on you, but he never constrained you. He
absolutely.
would go to the club, walk into the bar. We used to joke about him. He never read beyond the newspaper, but he would buy 4 books for all of us. I don't know. So it is this. He would say, just let the books lie. They will read them one day. This is exactly what happened. When you got bored, you picked up the book. And so, I mean, everybody loves their father, but I'm saying he would tell me, don't be ambitious. Or he would tell me, ambitious men are dangerous. I would feel guilty because I could sense from within that I'm ambitious. But somehow he let the ambition flower naturally. He didn't
Mm,
push
mm.
this man.
Right.
Because
Absolutely
him,
very well.
my mother was not this kind at all. She was very different. But it is these kind of people you need. I would say lazy parenting, or not too constrictive parenting. And these teachers, they are most, we have to start respecting our teachers, which we don't do at all. That is one of the reasons why education has got dumbed down.
So, one point is that I think being a post-trauma society where everyone is fighting for the only way to make money being doctor, lawyer, or engineer, that will eventually wear off, and we might get a better, better people there. But from a behavioral perspective, what I find is why I think adult education is important also. When I went into my third, I have 3 degrees. I would suggest to all the audience, do not do that. Please do not over educate yourself. I had to for because I had to because of different things. But what I noticed was that everyone who came in got enamored with the one teacher who showed some artsy movie because they had no previous exposure to an artsy film. So they could not actually distinguish between, oh, this foreign film is artistically good, oh, it is a foreign film. So their lack of exposure, and this pertains to that homework culture. I think in school you've done so much homework under stress that when you grow up you have no idea of the subject that you're being taught. There was a humanities teacher who had very far left views on certain things, and automatically, despite I had no political understanding at that point, the points were not very logical. When you say India treats, certain races differently, I had a counter. I said, look at Hong Kong. Do they treat Indians well? Here, there are these movies because I had that exposure. So these people don't actually tell you what they are going to teach. They come into classes to just ramble on, set, and the syllabi across institutions is a massive problem. From someone who has been overeducated within India, it is a massive problem. There is no set syllabus. It depends on teachers, guest lecturers, whoever they get. And they come and they say whatever they want. And students don't put in any due diligence by actually learning the basics of a subject before going into study. They go there to indoctrinate themselves. They go in, they listen, that's it. Then they mug that up, they write that in exams. So, both ways, in terms of an institutional culture, we don't cultivate critical thinking capacity at all, despite our potential. So,
You know, I
institutional
escaped,
gap.
I
Yeah.
escaped this tyranny because I went to NDA straight. I didn't say college, right?
Right.
So,
Yes.
but the,
Practical
but the
training.
yeah, no, I wonder why should an educated mind wish to impose a doctrine? Why should he want to doctrinate you? He should allow you to think freely, say his piece, and encourage free thinking. This business of a certain orientation in a university, I just don't understand.
No,
Not only
even
India,
on the other side, that was not very intellectual. It says, good morning नहीं बोलना है, हरि ओम तत्सत बोलना है. वैसे ही greeting करनी है. Fine. Now, I transferred from a different school where I had studied social studies in English. I cannot suddenly pick up social studies in Hindi. And if I didn't pick it up, I would be failed. Just just like that. He had the power to do so and he would fail me. I still passed. He couldn't fail me, but that was how it was. They have a lot more power. So I don't think teachers are not respected. I think teachers are not trained. Teachers are simply not trained to give. The one that was very impressive was we had a guest lecturer who was a military person. He also does a lot of talks around the country, and that got a lot of people excited because when you're a military person trained in articulation, you're one of the best. It always boosts morale and motivates people.
and not only that, let me tell you, contrary to popular impression, at least the Indian military, Indian army is a very democratic space. It
Absolutely.
allows you to give the contrary view. It allows feedback. It is just not, people think, do this, and that's the external demeanor. Internally, it's a very democratic space. I've had mentors who've really encouraged all this kind of stuff. So despite this very steely external frame, internally it's pretty soft. It's very welcoming of contrarian opinions. So I'm pretty fond of the Indian Army in that sense. And it encourages your growth over a period of life. And therefore, it is not without reason why military officers appear to be articulate, because they have been encouraged and trained through that. The others should do it equally vigorously. Perhaps
Absolutely.
that is the yes.
Thank you so much for joining us. Hopefully, I actually write an article based on whatever we discussed, especially the comparison between China and Pakistan's internal narrative versus the external narrative, how it compares with India's. So I've made notes there, and hopefully, I also come up with an article. But thank you so much for joining me today, and I'll talk soon.
All the best to you and a great pleasure. Thank you.